My name is Wayne Adams, and this is the restoration of Lake Eucha Watershed Restoration Plan. The Lake Eucha watershed is located a few miles south of Jay, Oklahoma, in the Illinois River subbasin. Over a period of time, fertilizer from farmers have been washed into Lake Eucha. This fertilizer has also been transported downstream into Beatty Creek. The disturbance event is algae created from the fertilizer used for agricultural purposes near the river. As farmers use the fertilizer, it gets washed into the Lake Eucha watershed from rainwater flows. This produces algae blooms upon the surface of the lake, groundwater, and wetlands. The process of algae growth is complex, including the temperature of lake water, nutrient levels, and turbidity. Much phosphate and nitrogen have been introduced into the lake through agricultural fertilizer. Reference Johnson, no date. The first portion of this restoration plan will be to deal with Lake Eucha. The lake will need to be dredged. Dredging is a process that will reduce sediment nutrient loads, and this process of dredging will deepen the lake bottom. This will reduce wave energy and reshape the lake bed of Lake Eucha to improve circulation. Dredging is used in numerous occasions around the world to overcome algae growth within lakes and rivers. This is a safe way to overcome algae, but it does have its drawbacks. Sometimes dredging can develop a sediment load on shorelines or islands. However, the main value of dredging is needed in most cases for the overall health of the lake. The next step is to tackle the algae growth within the groundwater that surrounds Lake Eucha. This groundwater has been assessed as having an overabundance of nitrate detected within the groundwater itself. The process which we will use on Lake Eucha is populating the groundwater with alginate immobilized SP beads. This will, over a 48-hour period, remove 90% of the nitrate within the groundwater system surrounding Lake Eucha and make the drinking water hospitable for human consumption. This is faster than most ways of controlling algae growth in groundwater systems. The final restoration plan will be to fix our wetland system that has been affected by the agricultural fertilizer from rainfall flows. The wetland has noticed an uptick in algae growth, and now it must be removed in a specific way so as not to harm the main infrastructure of the wetland. Eutrophication noticed in the wetlands can be overcome by using a floating treatment wetlands procedure to remove the algae growth from the wetlands in a friendly manner. How does this process work, called floating treatment wetlands? It consists of plants grown hydroponically on a floating mat that uptake water nutrients from their roots. The nutrients have created this process of algae growth will get caught up in tissues of young plant growth. Then the plant is harvested to gain the nutrients from the wetlands, like nitrate, that have produced the algae growth. This will be an effective and cost-worthy way to treat the wetlands. In this process, there are no chemicals needed that might hurt the wetland infrastructure. All of the algae growth will be removed and keep the integrity of the main ecosystem within the environment. This process can eliminate the need for dredging the wetland itself and destroying part of the ecosystem. A backup method to reducing the number of algae in the wetlands is to use chemicals. This method would introduce chemicals such as a product called algicide. The algicide would be introduced into the water and is safe for both fish and plants. It is not a cost-worthy venture, but would in the end remove the number of nutrients that have produced the water pollution from the agricultural fertilizer. Pond Depot, no date. Overall, this restoration plan takes into account the algae growth noted within the Lake Eucha, the groundwater surrounding Lake Eucha, and the wetland ecosystem itself. The first part of the restoration project, dredging for Lake Eucha, to remove sediments of the nitrate and increase lake circulation. Then we look at groundwater rehabilitation by populating groundwater through the introduction of alginate immobilized SP beads within the groundwater to eliminate the algae growth. Finally, floating treatment wetlands introduces a new method to overcome the algae process within the wetland infrastructure. This process uses young plants to take in nutrients and cause algae within the wetland. It will overcome the algae noted in the wetland without chemical use. However, a backup method is an algicide, and it would kill the algae completely without hurting fish or the ecosystem within the wetland. However, it is not a cost-worthy system. The amount of money to maintain the wetland and algicide would not be worth it if the floating treatment wetland structure was planned out. This is the end of my presentation on the Lake Eucha Watershed Restoration Plan.